It was my graduation party. I was there, smiling, watching the bubbles rise in my champagne glass when I saw him, my father, clandestinely adding a white powder to it. My heart seized. My own father was trying to poison me, so I kept smiling, then offered the glass to my sister. She drank what was intended for me. My name is Danielle, and I'm 22. I just graduated from Northwestern with a biochemistry degree. My parents had always disapproved of my life choices, yet they still threw me this extravagant graduation party. It was odd, especially since they'd called me a worthless leech just last week. As I watched the luxurious champagne effervesce, I spotted my father, discreetly slipping a substance into my glass when he thought no one was observing. My heart simply stopped. He was trying to poison me. If you're watching, let me know where. You're from in the comments. Please hit that like and subscribe button. I'm about to share how I survived my parents' ultimate betrayal and discovered a resilience I never knew I possessed. To grasp why my own parents would attempt to harm me, you need to understand the Harris family. We were far from a typical, loving household. My father, Joseph Harris, had transformed Harris Pharmaceuticals from a modest research lab into a multi-billion-dollar empire. His reputation for cutthroat business dealings was legendary. Competitors often found their funding mysteriously drying up or faced sudden, crippling regulatory obstacles. Yet, in public, he carefully cultivated the image of a benevolent philanthropist and devoted family man. My mother, Eleanor, hailed from old money. Her family had been deeply entrenched in pharmaceutical development for generations before her. Marriage to my father effectively merged their empires. She was utterly consumed by appearances and preserving the Harris legacy. Our mansion frequently graced the pages of architectural magazines, and her charity galas were the absolute highlight of Chicago society. Behind the gilded facade, however, she was cold, calculating and perpetually dissecting my every move, finding fault in everything about me. Then there was my older sister, Sophia. 3 years my senior, she was the epitome of perfection. Straight A, student, debate team captain, and a Harvard Business School graduate with honors. She joined the family company without a second thought, swiftly becoming the clear heir. Our parents never missed a single one of her tennis matches or piano recitals. Their trophies and awards were prominently showcased throughout our home. At dinner, when Sophia spoke, they hung on her every word. My experience, in stark contrast, was dramatically different. Even though I was also a straight-A student, my accomplishments were consistently met with dismissiveness. "That's simply what we expect from a Harris," my father would utter, his eyes never leaving his newspaper. When I clinched first place at the state science fair in 10th grade, my mother's sole critique was that my hair looked disheveled in the pictures. They only bothered to attend my events when their absence would appear suspicious to outsiders. From early childhood, my path was meticulously planned for me. I was to pursue pharmaceutical sciences, join the family enterprise, and ultimately lead the research division, leaving the business operations to Sophia. My objections were utterly disregarded. When I developed a passion for environmental science, in high school, specifically how pharmaceutical waste impacts ecosystems, my father scoffed, dismissing it as tree-hugger nonsense. During my junior year, I secretly applied to Northwestern, drawn by their environmental science program. The ensuing confrontation was explosive. My father threatened to disinherit me. My mother dissolved into tears, invoking family duty and tradition. Yet, I held my ground, asserting that I could still contribute meaningfully to the world without adhering to their precise blueprint. After weeks of their chilling, silent treatment, they finally capitulated, but with stipulations. They would fund my education only if I minored in biochemistry and completed summer internships at their company. College offered a taste of freedom, but the underlying tension intensified annually. Every holiday break was punctuated by their passive-aggressive remarks about my phase and how I'd eventually come to my senses. The pressure intensified during my junior year. They bombarded me with job descriptions for roles in their research department. When I landed an internship with an environmental nonprofit instead, they flat out threatened to cut off my tuition. I responded by taking out loans for my final year, refusing to capitulate. What remained unknown to them until recently was that my maternal grandmother, Eleanor's mother, Lillian, had bequeathed a substantial inheritance to me in a trust. This trust would become accessible upon my 23rd birthday or college graduation, whichever occurred later. Grandma Lillian had been the singular family member who championed my autonomy. A brilliant chemist herself, she had been relegated to working in her husband's shadow. Before her passing when I was 16, she made me promise to forge my own path. My parents stumbled upon the inheritance 3 months before my graduation. Their attorney inadvertently mentioned it during a family business meeting. Sophia later confided that our father had turned utterly pale with fury. The trust was impeccably structured, ironclad, with independent trustees, guaranteeing my complete financial independence. It contained roughly $12 million, money that would have flowed directly to my parents had I not graduated or had I died before accessing it. The months preceding graduation became eerily quiet. My parents ceased their incessant texts and calls hounding me about job interviews at their company. Instead, they suddenly expressed keen interest in my graduation plans. My mother even called to announce their desire to host a proper celebration befitting a Harris. Their abrupt shift in demeanor should have been my initial red flag. Graduation. Morning arrived bright and crisp, a flawless May day in Chicago. I stood before my apartment mirror, adjusting my cap and gown, a tumultuous mix of pride and apprehension churning within me. 4 years of relentless effort, maintaining a nearly perfect GPA while deliberately steering my life clear of my family's predetermined legacy, I had finally achieved it. My phone vibrated with a text from my mother. "Car service will pick you up at 9:30. Do not be late." I met my parents outside the auditorium. My father was engrossed in his emails, while my mother meticulously assessed my appearance. "Couldn't you have done something more with your hair?" she asked, by way of greeting. "The photographer will be taking family portraits later." No congratulations. No display of pride, just immediate critique. Sophia stood a little distance, away, offering me a small, encouraging smile. "Danielle," my best friend, Taylor's voice, sliced through the tense atmosphere. She hurried over, her own graduation gown billowing, with our other close friend, Zoe, right on her heels. They had been my anchors throughout college, the family I had consciously chosen for myself. "We actually made it!" Taylor hugged me tightly, murmuring, "Your parents still look like they just smelled something foul whenever they see you." "Some things never change," I whispered back. As my friends eagerly discussed the ceremony and our plans to share an apartment while launching our careers, I observed my parents move off to the side, engaged in what seemed to be an intense, hushed conversation. I couldn't make out most of it, but my father's words unmistakably carried over. "We need to resolve this problem today, before it escalates." My mother nodded grimly, then noticed me observing them. Her face instantly morphed into a perfected, social smile. "Darling," she purred, "we should locate our seats. The ceremony will commence shortly." The graduation ceremony itself flew by in a hazy succession of speeches, name announcements, and the gratifying heft of the diploma in my grasp. When Danielle Elizabeth Harris, summa cum laude, resonated through the auditorium, I distinctly heard Taylor and Zoe erupt in wild cheers. My parents offered polite applause, their expressions utterly unreadable. Following the ceremony, a car whisked us to the Peninsula, Chicago. My parents had leased the entire rooftop terrace for my graduation celebration. I was genuinely taken aback by the sheer extravagance. Towering ice sculptures, cascading champagne fountains, elaborate gourmet catering stations, and even a small orchestra performing in the corner. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and a professional photographer mingled among the early guests. "Quite the production your parents have orchestrated," remarked Dr. Lewis, approaching me with a glass of water. He had been my father's research partner decades ago, before leaving to teach at Northwestern. Over the years, he had become a mentor. To me, one of the rare connections to my family's world that I actually treasured. "Congratulations on your remarkable accomplishment, Danielle." "Thank you," I replied. "It's a bit much, isn't it? Not really their usual way, at least not for me." I surveyed the expanding crowd. "Actually, I'm quite surprised by the guest list. I barely recognize half these people." Dr. Lewis's gaze followed mine to where my father was deep in conversation, with two impeccably dressed men. "Business associates," he clarified. "And over there with your mother, that's Gerald Thorne, your family's lawyer." He lowered his voice. "Things have been rather strained at the company recently. Whispers of irregularities in some clinical trials. Your father has been holed up in private meetings for weeks." My stomach clenched. "What kind of irregularities?" He shook his head. "Nothing substantial yet. But be cautious, Danielle. Your parents appear—" He paused, weighing his words. "Unusually committed to preserving the Harris legacy right now." As the party reached its peak, I became aware of something peculiar. My parents were watching me incessantly. Not with affection, or even their typical air of disappointment, but with a cold, calculating focus that sent shivers down my spine. Each time I shifted to a different conversation group, one of them would subtly reposition themselves, ensuring I remained squarely within their line of sight. Sophia sidled up to me as I reached for an hors d'oeuvre. "Something feels off," she murmured. "Dad's asked me 3 times if you've mentioned your post-graduation plans, and Mom keeps glancing at her watch like she's expecting something." Before I could respond, my father clinked his glass, commanding attention. "In exactly 15 minutes, he announced, his practiced businessman's smile fixed in place. "We'll have a special champagne toast to our graduate. Everyone, please ensure you have a glass ready for the occasion." I observed as waiters began arranging flutes on glistening silver trays. My father then gestured to the head waiter, indicating a particular bottle of champagne with a distinctive gold label. "That one," I overheard him instruct, "is for the family only." With a quarter-hour remaining until the toast, I excused myself to use the restroom. The main facilities had a queue, so I discreetly slipped down a service corridor toward an employee restroom I'd noticed earlier. As I neared, angry whispers reached my ears from around the bend. "Are you absolutely certain this is necessary?" My mother's voice was taut, edged with a higher pitch than usual. "Do you want to lose everything we've built?" my father hissed back. "The FDA investigation is accelerating. If they uncover those test results, we're finished. The trust provides her with total financial autonomy. What if she decides to become an environmental crusader and exposes the river contamination from the West facility? She's always been self-righteous enough to do it. But poisoning her at her own graduation party, Joseph? Couldn't we just talk to her again? When has talking ever worked with her? She's obstinate and naive. It's just enough to make her ill, not to kill her. She'll be hospitalized for a few days with what appears to be food poisoning. That buys us time to manage the paperwork and relocate some assets before the trust disburses. Our lawyers confirmed if she dies before the official transfer next week, it reverts to us as her next of kin." "Keep your voice down," my mother hissed fiercely. "Someone could overhear us." My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. They were plotting to poison me, my own parents. The realization was so utterly monstrous, my mind initially recoiled from it. But the biochemist within me began to process my father's words clinically. Just enough to make her sick. A non-lethal dosage of something that would mimic food poisoning, yet severe enough to necessitate hospitalization. I retreated silently down the corridor before they could discover me. My hands trembled so violently I could barely manage to check my appearance in the main bathroom mirror. I had to project normalcy to think rationally. Decades of navigating my parents' emotional manipulation had trained me to compartmentalize. But this went far beyond anything I could have ever conceived. Returning to the party, I viewed everything through a new, chilling lens. Waiters meticulously arranged champagne flutes on a designated tray. My father approached, scrutinizing the glasses before singling one out and setting it slightly apart from the rest. The special gold-labeled bottle was uncorked, and the bartender began filling the flutes. My father loitered nearby, making sure he knew precisely which glass was which. I made my way to Taylor and Zoe, my voice astonishingly steady through sheer force of will. "I need you to do something for me. No questions asked," I whispered. Taylor, ever loyal, immediately nodded without hesitation. "Record the toast on your phone. Keep my father in the frame as much as you can, especially when he's distributing the champagne." "Is everything all right?" Zoe asked, her eyes filled with concern. "Just a precaution," I replied, forcing a smile. "Typical family drama." The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. My biochemistry training immediately engaged, assessing potential substances my father might employ. It would need to be something challenging to detect, something that could plausibly manifest as natural illness or typical food poisoning. Perhaps a compound from their very own research facilities, a substance not yet cataloged on standard toxicology screens. I would have to identify the symptoms rapidly if his scheme succeeded. Nausea and vomiting would likely be the initial indicators, potentially followed by abdominal pain, dizziness, or respiratory distress, depending on the specific toxin. If I could pinpoint it swiftly enough, I could direct medical personnel precisely what to screen for. As my father gathered everyone for the toast, I understood with absolute clarity that I needed tangible evidence. If I simply declined the champagne, they would undoubtedly attempt something else, another way. I required undeniable proof of their malicious intent, something concrete and irrefutable. The moment of the toast materialized with an almost dreamlike quality. Waiters circulated, distributing champagne to the general guests, while my father personally managed the flutes from the special designated bottle. "The family deserves the finest champagne for this truly special occasion," he declared jovially to those nearby. He presented glasses to my mother, then to Sophia, before extending one specifically to me, his gaze locking with mine, a smile plastered on his face that held no warmth whatsoever. I watched in a chilling slow motion as he presented the glass to me. With absolute certainty, I detected a faintly cloudy appearance at the bottom, where a powder had not entirely dissolved. My father's massive signet ring glinted as he gripped the stem, practically pushing the glass into my hand. "To Danielle," he declared loudly, raising his own glass. "May your future be everything you deserve." The chilling double meaning was not lost on me. I accepted the poisoned champagne, making sure it didn't touch my lips, even as guests began to take their first sips. Before we could drink, my mother interjected smoothly. "Joseph, darling, why don't you offer a few words about, our daughter on this special day?" My father cleared his throat, seamlessly transitioning into his public speaking persona. "Danielle has always been determined," he began, meticulously choosing words that sounded complimentary to outsiders, yet resonated with years of deep disapproval that only I could decipher. "While she has pursued an unconventional path, today we celebrate her academic accomplishment." As he droned on with his thinly veiled critical remarks, my mind raced. Taylor was filming as instructed, her phone subtly capturing every detail. I had to act now before the toast concluded. The champagne glass in my hand felt like a ticking bomb. "And to Sophia," my father abruptly added, surprising everyone by veering from the traditional graduate's toast, "who has truly exemplified what a Harris can achieve in the business world, the perfect embodiment of family loyalty." Sophia offered an uncomfortable smile, clearly caught off guard by being drawn into what should have been my singular moment. In that precise instant, my decision was made. "Speaking of my incredible sister," I interjected, stepping forward with a brilliant smile, "I honestly wouldn't be here without her support." I turned to Sophia, raising my glass. "She truly deserves a proper toast, too. In fact," I extended my champagne flute towards her, "this special reserve champagne Father selected is far too exquisite not to share. Please, take mine, sis. I insist." Before anyone could fully process my words, I had smoothly pressed my untouched glass into Sophia's hand and just as smoothly taken her partially drunk, safe glass in return. My father's face instantly froze in a public mask of horror he couldn't openly betray, while my mother's knuckles whitened around her own glass. "To family!" I declared, raising Sophia's original untainted champagne, my gaze fixed directly on my father's eyes. Confusion flickered across Sophia's face, but her ingrained social training kicked in. She smiled and raised the poisoned champagne. "To family," she echoed, and drank deeply from the glass. I took a sip from her original safe glass, never once breaking eye contact with my father. His complexion had turned ashen, a faint sheen of sweat appearing on his forehead as the full implication of what had transpired dawned on him. My mother's eyes darted between Sophia and him, her composed smile fracturing at the edges. The awkward moment dissipated. Guests applauded. Conversations resumed, and the orchestra picked up its melody. I moved through the crowd, engaging in superficial small talk, all while keeping Sophia firmly in my peripheral vision. Guilt and dread wrestled within me. I hadn't had the luxury of devising another solution, but I had just allowed my own sister to consume poison intended for me. The overheard conversation suggested the dose was non-lethal, yet what if my father had deceived my mother? What if Sophia reacted adversely to the substance? 34 minutes after the toast, it happened. I was conversing with one of my professors when a collective gasp drew my attention from across the room. Sophia had been chatting with one of the firm's junior associates when she abruptly pressed a hand to her forehead, swaying precariously. "I feel odd," I heard her murmur, her voice uncharacteristically slurring. "Really dizzy, suddenly." I pushed through the throng just as Sophia's knees gave way. The associate awkwardly caught her as she slumped forward. "Help!" he cried out. "Something's wrong!" My parents rushed over, genuine panic now contorting their faces, their golden child affected instead of their usual target. My father reached her first, cradling her head as she started mumbling incoherently. Her complexion had acquired a grayish pallor, and sweat beaded on her forehead. "Call an ambulance!" my mother shrieked, all pretense of composure utterly shattered. Dr. Lewis materialized beside me, his medical instincts instantly taking over as he checked Sophia's pulse. "Her heart rate is elevated and irregular," he reported, swiftly loosening her collar. What was she doing just before this occurred? "She'd just had champagne during the toast," the associate responded. "She seemed fine, then suddenly—" At that moment, my father's eyes snapped to mine, a horrifying blend of realization, fury, and raw fear in their depths. I met his gaze, without flinching. "The ambulance is en route," someone announced. 5 minutes out." I knelt beside Sophia, taking her hand. Stay with her, I instructed my parents firmly. I'll head downstairs to direct the paramedics. They nodded vaguely, their entire focus on Sophia, who had begun to tremble faintly. In the elevator's solitude, I pulled out my phone and called Taylor. "Meet me in the lobby right now," I commanded. "Bring your phone with the recording. It's an emergency." Taylor and Zoe were waiting as the elevator doors parted. "Sophia collapsed," I explained, hurrying toward the entrance. "I need you to give a copy of that toast recording to the paramedics and tell them I suspect poisoning." "Poisoning?" Zoe echoed, utterly horrified. "Danielle, what in the world is going on?" "I'll explain everything later," I replied. "Please, just trust me." The ambulance sirens were now distinct, growing rapidly closer. As the paramedics arrived, I approached the lead one directly. "My sister has collapsed upstairs," I stated clearly. "Her symptoms include dizziness, disorientation, an irregular heartbeat, and tremors. I have strong reason to believe she ingested a toxic substance in her champagne." The paramedic looked at me sharply. "You suspect poisoning? Based on what?" "I'm a biochemistry graduate," I explained. "The symptoms appeared abruptly, approximately 30 minutes after consumption. I also—" Before I could elaborate, my parents burst from the elevator, with Dr. Lewis assisting a semi-conscious Sophia. Between them, the paramedics surged forward with a gurney, their professional training taking over as they swiftly assessed her condition. "Please, help her!" my mother sobbed, her mascara streaking. "She just collapsed." "BP 90/60 and dropping," one paramedic reported. "Pulse 120 and irregular." As they carefully loaded Sophia into the ambulance, my father turned to me, his voice dangerously low. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I replied calmly. "She drank from my glass. Remember the special champagne you personally selected just for—" "Me?" His face contorted with a horrifying mix of rage and terror. "You deliberately switched the glasses. You knew." "Knew what, Father?" I held his gaze steadily. "That you put something in my drink? Why would I possibly think that? Unless you did." "She needs family with her," a paramedic interjected. "One person can ride along." "I'll go," my mother insisted, already scrambling into the ambulance. "We'll follow in the car," my father stated, his grip tight and painful on my arm. "All of us." The drive to Northwestern Memorial Hospital was fraught with strained silence. My father drove, while I sat in the back seat, Taylor and Zoe having promised to meet us there. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Taylor. "Video sent. To your email. Shows you clearly switching glasses after your father handed you one. What do I tell the police when they arrive?" Police? Of course there would be police if poisoning was suspected. I texted back instantly. "Tell them everything. You saw. Show them the video." In the emergency room, pandemonium reigned. Sophia had been rushed into a treatment area, my mother wailing theatrically to anyone who would listen about her precious daughter and her sudden, unexplained collapse. I approached the nurse's station directly. "I need to speak with my sister's doctor immediately," I stated. "I have reason to believe she ingested a toxin and I may know what it is." The nurse seemed skeptical until I added, "I am a biochemistry graduate specializing in pharmaceutical compounds. Please, time could be critical." Minutes later, I was speaking with Dr. Patel, the emergency physician overseeing Sophia's treatment. "Your sister is exhibiting symptoms consistent with anticholinergic poisoning," Dr. Patel explained. "Elevated heart rate, disorientation, dilated pupils, dry mouth. We are managing her symptoms while conducting toxicology screens. You need to specifically test for cyclopentolate derivatives," I stated. "My father works with modified versions at Harris Pharmaceuticals. They're developing a new class of compounds that wouldn't appear on standard toxicology screens." Dr. Patel's eyebrows arched. "That's a very precise suggestion. Why do you suspect this particular compound?" I took a deep breath. "Because I believe my father intentionally introduced it into my champagne glass, but my sister consumed it. Instead, her professional composure remained intact, but she reached for the phone. "I need to contact the police." Within the hour, the emergency room had become a crime scene. 2 detectives questioned hospital staff, while a uniformed officer guarded Sophia's treatment room. My parents had been separated for interrogation. My mother loudly decried the absurd accusations, while my father imperiously demanded his attorney. I sat in a small consultation room with Detective Rivera, a serious woman whose kind eyes subtly contradicted her no-nonsense demeanor. "Walk me through what occurred again," she requested, meticulously taking notes. I recounted every detail, from the chilling overheard conversation to witnessing my father add the powder to my champagne and my split-second decision to swap glasses with Sophia. "I have biochemistry training," I explained. "I recognized the symptoms as they began. I never imagined he would employ something potentially fatal, but I couldn't be certain." "And why would your parents desire to poison you?" she inquired cautiously. "Money," I responded simply. "Control. My grandmother established a trust for me, valued at around $12 million, set to activate next week. Had I died before then, it would have reverted to my parents. They also recently learned their pharmaceutical company is under active FDA investigation, and they likely fear I possess information that could jeopardize them." Detective Rivera's expression remained neutral, but she noted something and underlined, "That is a grave accusation." "I know," I said softly. "I have the video my friend recorded of the toast. It plainly shows my father handing me a specific glass and my subsequent decision to swap with Sophia. You can also question Dr. Lewis, who is privy to the underlying tensions within our family and the company." A knock on the door interrupted us. Dr. Patel entered, holding a tablet. "We have preliminary toxicology results," she announced. "We detected elevated levels of a modified anticholinergic compound, similar to, but not identical to, cyclopentolate. It appears to be an experimental research compound, not yet approved for commercial distribution." Detective Rivera looked between us. "In plain English, please. It's a lab-synthesized drug that would induce symptoms mimicking severe food poisoning but with added cardiovascular effects," I elaborated. "Exactly the kind of compound Harris Pharmaceuticals has been developing. Only someone with access to their research facilities would possess it." "Will she recover?" I asked Dr. Patel, my voice tinged with anxiety. "We are administering physostigmine as an antidote," she responded. "Her condition is serious but stable. Had we not identified the compound so quickly, there could have been permanent cardiac damage." I briefly closed my eyes, a wave of profound relief washing over me. "Thank you." When I opened them, I found Detective Rivera observing me intently. "You understand that, by your own admission, you knowingly permitted your sister to drink what you suspected was poisoned champagne?" My stomach plummeted. "First," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "I didn't know what else to do in that moment. I desperately needed evidence. I believed it was only enough to make someone sick, not life-threatening. I made a terrible choice, and I'll have to live with that." Before she could respond, the door burst open. My father stormed in, trailed by a flustered officer and a sharply dressed man in an expensive suit. "This is an outrage!" my father bellowed. "My daughter is clearly mentally unstable and consumed by jealousy over her sister's accomplishments. She's been leveling outlandish accusations about our family for years." "Mr. Harris, I must insist you step outside," Detective Rivera stated, firmly rising to her feet. "Joseph Harris, not another word," the suited man commanded, placing a hand on my father's arm. "I am Gerald Thorne, the Harris family attorney. My client has no comment at this time." "Your client is not under arrest yet," Detective Rivera underscored that last word, "but I strongly suggest he cooperate fully. We possess video evidence of the champagne toast and preliminary toxicology reports confirming a research-grade pharmaceutical compound in Sophia Harris's system." My father's face cycled through a swift succession of emotions before settling into a mask of chilling fury. Danielle has always been problematic, he stated, his voice suddenly calm and deceptively reasonable. She was consumed by jealousy of her sister, resentful of our expectations. She's threatened to ruin our family business out of spite before. That's not true, I protested. We indulged her environmental science whims despite her clear responsibilities to the family company, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken at all. We even hosted this costly graduation party to demonstrate our support. And how does she repay us? By concocting this elaborate charade and allowing her own sister to become ill. Gerald Thorne placed a business card on the table. Detective, we will cooperate fully with your investigation, but all future inquiries must be directed through me. The Harris family is highly esteemed in this community, and we expect discretion. After they departed, Detective Rivera retrieved the card with 2 fingers, as if it were tainted. You certainly have an interesting family, Miss Harris. You have no idea, I replied, weary to my bones. A disturbance in the hallway caught our attention. Dr. Lewis had arrived and was engaged in a heated discussion with the officer guarding Sophia's room. I am her family physician, he insisted. I need to review her treatment. Detective Rivera and I stepped out just as Dr. Lewis caught sight of me. Danielle, thank goodness. What happened? They're saying Joseph tried to poison you. Before I could answer, Dr. Patel emerged from Sophia's room. She's asking for you, Danielle. She's still groggy, but she's lucid. Stepping into the softly lit hospital room, a fresh wave of guilt washed over me at the sight of Sophia, connected to monitors, an IV line in her arm. Her usually flawless appearance was disheveled, her skin still retaining an unhealthy pallor. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached. Hey, I whispered softly, taking her hand. How are you feeling? Like I was hit by a truck, she replied, her voice hoarse. They told me, is it true? Did Dad really try to poison you? I nodded slowly, tears welling in my eyes. I'm so sorry you drank it instead. I reacted, I clarified. Why? She whispered, confusion and raw pain clouding her eyes. Why would he do that? Grandma Lillian's trust, the FDA investigation. They feared I would expose the contamination at the West facility. Understanding slowly dawned in Sophia's eyes. The sealed reports, the ones they kept on the secure server. I saw them last month but didn't comprehend what I was looking at. Heavy metal readings, disposal records. She squeezed my hand weakly. They've been dumping research waste directly into the watershed for years. A soft knock interrupted us as Detective Rivera entered with another plainclothes officer. Miss Harris, she began, we've just received some additional information I thought you should be aware of. The FBI has been investigating Harris Pharmaceuticals for the past 6 months for fraud, environmental violations, and falsification of clinical trial data. I stared at her. The FBI? Yes. Your parents were already under surveillance. When we contacted them about the poisoning incident, they disclosed they possess substantial evidence of criminal activity. They've just executed search warrants at your family's offices and home. Sophia's monitors beeped, her heart rate spiking. Oh my God, she whispered. I signed off on some of those documents. Joseph said they were routine regulatory filings. We will need to speak with you about that later, Miss Harris, the other officer told Sophia. For now, concentrate on your recovery. As they departed, Sophia began to weep softly. I trusted them implicitly. I always defended them whenever you complained about their treatment of you. And all this time. I held her hand tightly. You didn't know. They manipulated both of us just in different ways. What happens now? She asked, fear and uncertainty now eclipsing her customary self-assurance. "Now we tell the truth," I replied simply, "all of it." The story exploded in the Chicago Tribune 2 days later. Pharmaceutical CEO and wife arrested for attempted murder of daughter. Smaller headlines crowed, "FBI uncovers massive fraud and environmental crimes at Harris Pharmaceuticals." Our family name, once synonymous with triumph and charitable giving, instantly became shorthand for corporate avarice and profound familial treachery. I temporarily relocated to Taylor and Zoe's apartment, unable to face returning to my own place, where reporters now lurked. Sophia remained hospitalized for 4 more days before being released into the care of our Aunt Patricia, my mother's estranged sister, who flew in from Seattle upon hearing the news. I always suspected Eleanor was capable of dreadful things. Aunt Patricia confided in me over coffee in the hospital cafeteria. "But I never envisioned anything like this. I should have remained in touch with you girls." The investigation swiftly broadened. Armed with search warrants, the FBI uncovered a cache of damning documents at both the Harris corporate offices and our family residence. Emails meticulously detailed the systematic falsification of safety data for 3 prominent drugs currently on the market. Environmental analyses revealed years of illicit toxic waste disposal, which had severely contaminated groundwater in communities adjacent to the West facility. Detective Rivera kept me informed regarding the poisoning case. The lab confirmed. "The compound was an experimental anticholinergic from your father's private research facility," she explained during one of our meetings. "He personally signed it out 3 days before your graduation. We also discovered notes in his home office outlining precise dosage calculations." I cooperated fully with the authorities, sharing everything I knew about the company's operations and my parents' conduct. Days blurred into a haze of police interviews, meetings with prosecutors, and constant checks on Sophia's recovery. A week following the incident, I met with Special Agent Donovan from the FBI at his request. He fanned photographs across the table between us. "Do you recognize this location?" I scrutinized the images, which depicted what appeared to be a storage unit. Inside, there were stacks of documents, multiple laptop computers, and most unsettlingly, vials of various compounds meticulously arranged in temperature-controlled containers. "No," I replied. "I've never seen this place." "It's a storage unit rented under your name," he stated, keenly observing my reaction. "Opened 6 months ago, with what appears to be a forged signature." My blood ran cold. They had been meticulously planning this for months, setting me up in case. Their initial schemes faltered. "It seems so," Agent Donovan confirmed. "We found evidence on your father's computer detailing multiple contingency plans. The poisoning attempt was, in fact, Plan C. Plans A and B involved more intricate setups designed to implicate you in corporate espionage and data theft. As the case intensified, even more family secrets surfaced. Financial records exposed that my parents had been systematically siphoning company funds into offshore accounts for years. Former employees stepped forward with accounts of being fired after voicing safety concerns. 3 families initiated lawsuits, alleging their loved ones died from side effects that Harris Pharmaceuticals had deliberately suppressed during clinical trials. Throughout this ordeal, Sophia and I forged a bond deeper than we'd ever known. Her golden child facade crumbled as she grappled with her own sense of betrayal and manipulation. "I was their puppet," she confessed during one of our lengthy discussions in her recovery room. "Everything I did was to appease them. My entire identity revolved around being the perfect Harris daughter. You were also their shield," I gently pointed out. "As long as you were the successful, compliant one, they could easily dismiss me as the problem child rather than scrutinizing their own conduct." 2 weeks after the incident, we received news that our parents were being held without bail the judge having classified them as flight risks due to their considerable overseas assets. Their preliminary hearing was set for the following week. On the morning of the hearing, Sophia and I met for breakfast at a quiet cafe, a safe distance from the courthouse. She still moved gingerly, her body not fully recuperated from the poison. "Are you prepared for this?" I asked, stirring my untouched coffee. "No," she admitted. "But we have to be there. I need to look them in the eyes." The courthouse steps were thronged with reporters who barraged us with questions as we approached. Inside, the hearing room fell into an immediate hush as we entered, every eye trained on the poisoned daughter and the targeted one. Our parents sat at the defense table, both impeccably dressed, despite weeks in detention. My mother's eyes welled with tears upon seeing Sophia, but my father stared rigidly ahead, refusing to acknowledge either of us. The evidence presented was overwhelming. The prosecution displayed the video of the toast, clearly showing my father handing me the specific glass and my subsequent swap with Sophia. They presented the toxicology reports, the compound's trace matching precisely to samples found in my father's private lab. Financial records starkly demonstrated the motive, my trust fund, which would have reverted to them upon my death. Most shocking to the spectators was a recorded phone call my father had made from detention to a business associate, instructing him to clean up the situation with those river samples, and remarking that Danielle was always the problem child, never grasping family loyalty. When the judge ruled there was ample evidence to proceed to trial on all counts, including attempted murder, my mother collapsed in theatrical sobs. My father remained impassive, only a clenched jaw betraying his fury. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed once more. Sophia surprised me by taking my hand and addressing them directly. "My sister and I are cooperating fully with authorities. We request privacy during this difficult time as we process our parents' betrayal. Thank you." As we navigated the crowd toward our waiting car, a reporter called out, "Did you know your sister was switching the glasses? Were you part of the plan?" Sophia halted, turning back with an unexpected fire in her eyes. "My sister saved my life. Our parents attempted to poison her, and when she grasped that fact, she had mere seconds to decide what to do. She's carried undeserved guilt for my suffering, but the sole individuals accountable are Joseph and Eleanor Harris. They were prepared to end their own daughter's life for financial gain and to conceal their transgressions. That is the narrative you should be reporting." In the subsequent days, more distant family members, whom we barely knew, began reaching out. Cousins, great-aunts, even my father's brother, who had been exiled from the family decades prior for blowing the whistle on an earlier pharmaceutical scandal. It became evident our family tree was riddled with similar tales of control, manipulation, and vindictive retaliation against anyone who defied the Harris way. Sophia and I embarked on the arduous process of legally and financially severing ties with our parents. We retained our own attorney, a kind yet incredibly astute woman named Vivian Santos, who guided us through the intricate complexities of our situation. "Your grandmother's trust is secure," she assured me during one meeting. "The trustees have expedited the transfer given these extraordinary circumstances. As for Harris Pharmaceuticals, that's more involved," she continued. "I want absolutely nothing to do with it," I stated firmly. Sophia nodded in agreement. "Nor do I. However, we bear a responsibility to the employees who were not complicit in the criminal activities and to the communities ravaged by the contamination. There's also the matter of your parents' personal assets," Vivian added. "Much will likely be seized by the government or allocated toward victim restitution, but there will still be significant holdings that would typically pass to you as their only children." I glanced at Sophia, seeing my own internal struggle mirrored in her eyes. "We need time to consider that," I finally said. As summer wore on, the case against our parents gained undeniable momentum. 3 former Harris Pharmaceuticals executives, agreed to testify in exchange for reduced sentences. Environmental analyses confirmed widespread contamination directly attributable to improperly discarded research chemicals. The estimated remediation costs surpassed $100 million. In August, 2 months after the graduation party, Sophia and I returned to our childhood home with FBI agents to help identify additional documents and evidence. Walking through those silent, imposing rooms felt utterly surreal. Everything appeared, precisely as it always had, flawless, cold, and sterile. In my father's study, agents were meticulously cataloging the contents of his safe. "Miss Harris," one called out, extending a small leather-bound journal. "Do you recognize this?" I scrutinized the images, which depicted what appeared to be a storage unit. Inside, there were stacks of documents, multiple laptop computers, and, most unsettlingly, vials of various compounds meticulously arranged in temperature-controlled containers. I took it carefully. The journal was ancient, its pages yellowed with age. Inside, I discovered my grandmother Lillian's elegant handwriting. It chronicled her own discoveries and burgeoning concerns about Harris Pharmaceuticals from decades earlier. The final entry, dated shortly before her death, read, "I have arranged for Danielle's financial independence. She alone possesses the conscience and resilience to shatter this family's toxic cycle." Tears streamed down my face as I showed it to Sophia. "She knew," I whispered. "She was trying to protect me all along." "And you protected me," Sophia replied, squeezing my hand. "That's what true family does." 6 months after that fateful graduation party, I stood on the porch of my grandmother's lake house, watching the November sun glisten across the water. The property, a tranquil retreat 2 hours outside Chicago that I had often visited as a child, was now my sanctuary, at least temporarily, as I contemplated my next moves. The trust had been officially transferred to me 3 weeks after the incident, the trustees unanimously agreeing to expedite the process due to the exceptional circumstances. The very first thing I did was establish a separate fund specifically for Sophia's ongoing medical care and therapy. Though her physical recovery was complete, the psychological scars ran deep. "Hot chocolate delivery!" a voice called from behind me. Sophia emerged from the house, carrying 2 steaming mugs, bundled, in one of my oversized sweaters. She had moved in with me a month prior, having sold her downtown condo, a place too saturated with memories of family, business dinners, and the crushing weight of parental approval. "Perfect timing," I smiled, accepting the mug gratefully. "I was just reflecting on how much has transformed." "Everything," she agreed, settling into the Adirondack chair beside mine. "Remember coming here with Grandma Lillian? She'd let us stay up late, stargazing, telling us stories about women scientists who changed the world." "I remember Mother detesting those trips," I chuckled softly. "She was convinced Grandma was filling our heads with dangerous independence." "She was right about that, at least." Sophia's smile turned thoughtful. "The prosecutors called this morning they're offering a plea deal." My hands tightened around the warm mug. "What kind of deal?" 20 years for Father on the attempted murder charge, plus the environmental crimes. And for Mother, if she testifies about the corporate fraud." She paused. "They want to know if we object." I gazed out at the lake, watching an eagle lazily circle above the water. "Do you?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me craves a full trial, to expose absolutely everything. But another part just wants it to be over." "I understand," I finished for her. We sat in comfortable silence, a new dynamic for sisters who had spent most of their lives as strangers coexisting in the same family space. The preceding months had forged a genuine connection between us, built on shared trauma, but blossoming into true friendship and unwavering trust. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Lewis. "Environmental job interview went well. They were impressed by your research proposal on pharmaceutical waste remediation. Call me for details." I smiled, showing the message to Sophia. After the initial chaos subsided, I had begun reaching out to environmental science firms specializing in industrial contamination cleanup. My biochemistry background, combined with my environmental focus, uniquely qualified me to address pharmaceutical pollution specifically. It felt inherently right, leveraging the Harris knowledge to begin healing some of the immense damage my family had inflicted. Sophia embarked on her own path of recovery. She had resigned from Harris Pharmaceuticals immediately upon her hospital discharge and had spent months assisting authorities in deciphering the company's operations and identifying complicit executives. Now she was contemplating law school, inspired by the dedicated prosecutors and victim advocates she had encountered throughout our case. "The house is being seized next week," she mentioned, referring to our childhood home. "They wanted to know if there's anything personal we want to retrieve first." I shook my head. "Nothing I need from there. What about you?" "I already took the photo albums," she replied. "The genuine ones. Not the staged family portraits Mother kept in the living room, but the candid ones Nora used to take." Nora had been our housekeeper for 15 years, the closest thing to a loving maternal figure we experienced daily. "Have you heard from Nora?" I asked. "She's in Florida with her daughter," Sophia said. "She sent me a care package last week with homemade cookies and a note saying she always knew we would break free eventually." The criminal proceedings continued their sluggish advance through the justice system. Our parents publicly maintained their innocence, while their attorneys frantically negotiated behind the scenes. The evidence was overwhelming, with fresh details constantly surfacing as former employees came forward. Most agonizingly, we discovered through corporate emails that our parents had been fully aware of the environmental contamination for over a decade. Communities downstream from the factory had suffered elevated cancer rates and birth defects, information my parents had systematically suppressed through confidential settlements and manipulated studies. I channeled my anger into concrete action, establishing a foundation with a portion of my inheritance. It was dedicated to providing healthcare and environmental testing for the affected communities. It couldn't undo the harm, but it was a beginning toward atoning for the Harris legacy. The media gradually diverted its attention to newer scandals, granting us precious anonymity to reconstruct our lives. I began volunteering with a water quality monitoring program at the lake, finding solace and healing in the simple act of safeguarding something beautiful. On a frigid January morning, precisely 7 months after the graduation party, Sophia and I sat in the courtroom as our parents formally accepted their plea deals. They appeared diminished somehow, their designer attire replaced by subdued business suits, their imperious demeanor eroded by months in detention. My mother wept quietly as the judge meticulously detailed her crimes, while my father remained stoic, his gaze fixed on some distant point. Neither of them looked at us, their daughters, seated in the public gallery. When asked if they wished to make statements before sentencing, my mother tearfully declined. My father rose, and for a fleeting moment, I dared to hope he might express remorse. Instead, he pontificated about his lifetime contributions to medical science and how he had consistently done what was necessary to safeguard the family business. He painted himself as a victim of evolving regulatory standards and voiced hope that history would judge him more fairly than this court. Not once did he acknowledge the communities his company had poisoned, the patients harmed by falsified drug, safety data, or his attempt to murder his own daughter. In his mind, he remained entirely justified, a man who had simply done what was required. As the bailiff escorted them away to begin their sentences, I felt a complex surge of emotions: sadness for what our family could have been, anger at their unyielding refusal to accept responsibility, but primarily an overwhelming sense of relief. It was, at last, truly over. Outside the courthouse, away from the dwindling cluster of reporters, Dr. Lewis waited with Taylor and Zoe, my chosen family, who had supported me unfailingly through the entire ordeal. "How are you feeling?" Taylor asked, hugging me tightly. "Free," I replied simply. "Like I can finally breathe." In the months that followed, Sophia and I continued our separate yet intertwined healing journeys. We liquidated the majority of our parents' personal assets, channeling the proceeds directly into a victim compensation fund. I accepted the role with the environmental remediation firm, specifically concentrating on the cleanup of the Harris West facility site. Sophia commenced her first semester of law school, resolute in her determination to specialize in environmental law and corporate accountability. We retained the lake house as our shared sanctuary, a place filled with happy memories untainted by our parents' malevolent influence. Sometimes we would sit on the dock talking late into the night, processing our complex grief for the family we had lost and the one we had never truly possessed. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" Sophia asked me one evening as we watched the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. I considered the question carefully. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word. I've accepted what happened and who they are. I've released the anger because carrying it only harmed me, but forgiveness feels like it demands repentance from them, and I don't believe they're capable of that. She nodded thoughtfully. "I keep pondering nature versus nurture. Were they born this way, or did something make them like this? And either way, what does that imply for us?" "It means we have choices," I stated firmly. "Their blood runs in our veins, but their values don't have to run in our hearts. We get to decide what kind of people we become." A year after that fateful graduation party, I stood at a podium, addressing a conference on pharmaceutical environmental impact. As I discussed innovative approaches to remediation, I caught sight of Sophia in the audience, proudly recording my speech on her phone. Beside her sat Dr. Lewis, Taylor, Zoe, and a burgeoning circle of friends and colleagues who had become our steadfast support system. The journey had been unimaginably painful. Yet standing there, I realized I had found something I had never experienced within the Harris household: genuine belonging. It wasn't predicated on compliance or achievement or even genetic connection, but on mutual respect, shared values, and authentic care. My parents had perceived me as a problem to be solved, a threat to be eradicated. They had attempted to poison not just my body, but my spirit, my independence, my very sense of self. By choosing to fight back and refusing to become either victim or villain in their narrative, I had unearthed my own inherent strength and purpose. The inheritance my grandmother bequeathed was valuable, but her true gift had been her unwavering belief in my capacity to break the toxic cycle. That faith had saved my life, and now it was actively shaping my future. Have you ever faced the difficult choice of protecting yourself from toxic family relationships? What helped you find the strength to move forward? I hope my story serves as a reminder that blood relation does not grant anyone the right to harm you, and that sometimes the most loving families are the ones we meticulously create for ourselves. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of survival and renewal. And remember, the most potent antidote to poison is always truth. Thank you for joining me on my journey.